Good evening, everyone. Today we are going to talk about something which is very important for all entrepreneurs, right? How do you build a profitable and sustainable business, right? Especially in the current VC-funded companies and where there are a lot of focus on valuation, right? The focus on building profitable and resilient business, right, is something that is core for building more valuable business, but is that the focus in most of the funded companies, right? So without wasting a lot more time, my first question, I think, Satwick, right? See, I think you've been in the wealth management side. You have invested or you've advised your clients in terms of investments, and you've seen a lot of companies, right, for over 2 decades that have consistently delivered value, right? And there are and those companies which have consistently delivered value, you call them resilient and creating value for the shareholders, right? What are the core characteristics that you would see in these companies and that make them more resilient and also survive the test of time?
So thanks, Karthik. It's a privilege to be here. So thanks for inviting me. I think I'll try and answer this question from 2 vantage points that I've had. First is as an observer of entrepreneurs who've created phenomenal businesses over the last sort of close to 25 years that I've worked with them. Then also as an advisor to clients who've been investing in a lot of these businesses that have created phenomenal shareholder wealth over a long period of time. And I think in some of the earlier sessions, some examples were taken, but let me sort of take another one today, which is that of Pidilite Industries, to define what a resilient business is. Now, this is a business that was started 60 years back. Today, the business is worth about $16 billion. Just in the last sort of 20 years, this business has delivered a return of 30% per annum to its shareholders. That's phenomenal sort of value creation that has happened. I think businesses can be judged on several parameters: scale, profitability, rate of growth. To my mind, the most important parameter to judge a business on is resilience. Now, resilient businesses create enormous shareholder wealth over a period of time. And conversely, which is what we should also think about, fragile businesses destroy shareholder wealth. So resilience is across 2 dimensions, in my opinion. There's internal resilience and there's external resilience. So when you look at internal resilience, you're looking at characteristics like a profitability, a business which generates free cash flow. That cash flow can be reinvested at a good return. External resilience is basically, again, across 2 parameters: a business that has a strong competitive moat, so it can fight against competitors which can disrupt it, and a business which is agile, which is nimble, and which is adaptable, which can survive against disruptive forces that may come from the macro environment. Best businesses are not just fragile, but if I have to borrow Taleb's words, they're actually anti-fragile. In periods of disruption, they actually thrive when their competition is actually withering away. Now, the most important characteristics which define what a business, whether a business is resilient or not, are culture and leadership. At least that has been my observation. Culture is what every employee of the company does when nobody's looking, right? It's what you do on a day-to-day basis, every employee. Now, that culture of frugality, of financial discipline, of operational excellence, I think is a big driver of resilience. On the other hand, when we come to things like leadership, leadership is what shepherds the company during periods of disruption. To my mind, the most important responsibility of a good leader is to make a business resilient. And I'll just mention one small point, which is, I think, a little under appreciated. Leadership starts with managing your own self, right? As far as the parameter of resilience is concerned, managing your own physical and mental health, managing your own family dynamics. Lot more businesses, especially in India and I would say globally, have got destroyed because the next generation could not keep its act together and the family could not stay together. And over a period of time, the business withered away. So that's, I think, the way I would see that.
Very well said, Satwick. See, I think Mr. BB, so Satwick gave the example of Pidilite, right? Pidilite, you will call them as somebody who's been there for many years in the traditional business, right? But as an investor, you're investing in new age companies, right? They don't have a fairly long track record, right, to determine whether they are resilient or not, right? But you look for certain characteristics that make them, that make you believe that they're going to be resilient going forward, right? So what do you look for in your investments, and what are the characteristics that you look for in a startup that you feel that these businesses are going to be more resilient going forward?
Hi. So first of all, I always tell these young founders, in spite of the companies who are becoming the unicorns with a negative bottom line, but I always tell the young founders that you need to balance between the valuation, profitability, and yet have a resilient. In case if the things go wrong, they should be in a position to pivot the business, you know. So this is the key message I give. That is only the type of companies we select. Even before selecting the companies, we do analyze these scenarios. In case if this so-and-so thing happens, how do you respond, you know? I'll give an example. During the COVID, we all seen several companies getting impacted. One of our company, as a portfolio company, they could able to pivot and they grown the business in the COVID, right? Not just that, after the COVID, because they are focusing on a profitability and sustainable, long-term sustainable thing, they could able to split that company into the two. One is a product company and the services company, and both of them are doing well. As an investor, what more we want? So fundamentally, the founders should have a balance between the eye on the valuation and the profitability. That's what I like. That's what we keep preaching them also, right? The second point, since you brought up the new age companies, unlike the companies what Satwick has mentioned, we focus on the deep tech, and we believe in our fundamental analysis in 2 to 3 years, if the company becomes a positive bottom line, then only we look at that, right? The reason is, many people 6 years, 7 years back, most of the funds in India were staying away from investing into the deep tech, not knowing deep tech is only the sector that can give you a quick exits. In normal businesses, on a B2B or B2C businesses, they keep on raising the money and, it's a long haul. But we look for the people who can have an eye on the exit as well. And we have seen the companies who are just exited in 18 months, giving a 4x, 5x returns to us, 18 months to 2 years. That will happen only in the B2B segment, deep tech, and deep tech B2B. And in other sectors, it won't happen, So that also we look at a company, a founder, does he have an eye for an exit, giving an exit to the investors, and that is the same philosophy we have been following. I think we are very happy about our strategy, and in fact, we have 12 portfolio companies giving in excess of 64% IRR with 6 exits and 1 unicorn in the exit, in the portfolio. So my message to the founders is, don't get carried away by the valuations. They are important, but they are very, very dynamic, So rather believe in the bottom line. That's my key message. Of course, in the initial days, you need to, and keep an eye in case if there is something goes wrong, you should have an ability to pivot the business and find a new direction. That is what we require in the founding leadership.
So I think one important point you said is like focus on bottom line, right? And we have a founder, Agam. He's backed by some really marquee investors, right? And when you talk about funding, and you typically think that the companies are like burning a lot more cash and then they are raising money. But interestingly, Agam, your company is profitable, and not just profitable, it's PAT positive, right? So how did you manage that, right? And also build a great business in a fairly short period of time. Just take us through that.
So, I mean, every business when you start, I mean, it takes time to get to a situation where it becomes profitable. I think even before we get there, to some of the points that you were asking, I think resilience comes from two things: staying alive and staying relevant. And I mean, if you are alive and relevant for a long period of time, for almost 8-10 years, then almost everybody who comes as part of Wave dies as Wave, and you still stay relevant. So those are things which are very critical, but they are elements of some of more fundamental things which actually enable those factors to happen. And the first thing that promoters or founders of the company have to be very certain about is, what is the game that you're going to play? And which is the segment that you're going to play in? And be very certain about what is your core competency. Businesses must always be built only on core competency, not on adjacencies. If you're not really great at something, and if you don't have a unique point of view or a unique approach to a certain solution or a product, you're most likely not going to make it there. And so that's number one. And then life, just like business, is a function of people and capital. So you need enough people and you need enough capital. And unless you have both those equations sorted, you're not there. You're not going to make it. And so as founders, it's founders' responsibility to look for people and look for capital and solve for both. And then, I mean, the next most important thing is, how do you build the culture in the organization? How do you build people who will do like really best efforts of their lives every single day they come to sort of work for? And that gets triggered by one singular thing, and that's purpose. It doesn't get triggered by the amount of stuffs you can make people available in your workplace or the salaries you can offer to them. I mean, in a lot of cases that we have seen, we hired talent which would ideally have never moved to India. But they decided to move to India because in interviews they would come and tell us, it's the first time that somebody's saying that we have to put India back on that trajectory. We have to work for the country. And so if there is a purpose, if there is a cause, people relate to it. And there is nothing more important than that purpose. And when that purpose happens, brotherhood happens across the company. I mean, what is a company but a group of people? And if this group of people can give their blood and sweat towards a cause, I mean, then magic will happen. And so setting those clarities in an organization, what is the real purpose? What are we all going to be driven by, whatsoever may come? And when there are tough situations, then that brotherhood, that's a very critical feeling that the organization needs to have. And all of these stems from, largely from how founders really perceive their businesses. And we, for that matter, were very clear in our very early days. We said we'll do a number of iterations around different models of business, and we'll see what succeeds, where is the product market fit, and then they will eventually go and launch. So we have number of sort of businesses within the agri stack and then other sort of stacks in biomaterial space and the healthcare space that we operate in. Now, all businesses, of course, cannot become profitable on day zero. So there is a journey that each business takes. So some of our businesses are profitable. Some of our businesses are on way to get there. All businesses have a time. But our frame of mind is very clear. If a business doesn't make money or it doesn't show signs of profitability in a period of, let's say, an year or round about that, then I mean, as founders, you have to double click on why are we at all in that business. I mean, you're not in a business to burn money. You're in business to make money. Those are, I mean, fundamentals why you get in something in the first place. So I think if we just, as founders, do first principle thinking, very fundamental thinking, get in business to make money, do things which will really be transformative, where you have unique point of view, where you're building something which is completely differentiated or solves a very, very sort of core problem, then you are in for the long game. And stay there. I mean, to be a resilient company, I mean, we, for that matter, had 3 instances in our company because it was a bootstrap company for almost 6 years. And there were 3 instances where we actually ran out of any capital in the company. And we were a very deep R&D company. And then we went back to people. One time I went back to people and there were like 11 employees in the company back in the time. And very early days, we were like 3 years into the business. And just doing R&D, I went to them and said that there is no money. And can you guys support me for 6 months? And 6 months, I'll try to make things better. And nobody left. All of those people stuck. They are still there. And that happens when you have that common goal, common purpose clearly laid out. The other thing that founders also have to do is you have to really make people believe that they belong, right? I think what is happening in a lot of hurry is that we are keeping culture on the side. And it is the most critical thing. You have to really do everything in your might. It's not just about their professional growth, it's also about their personal growth. And as promoters, it's like our KPI to ensure that they succeed whatsoever in their personal and professional lives. And when you care for them as much, they will come back and care for you. And that's when resilient companies are built in the long term.
So it's commendable, Agam, and I think some great points you made, right? Focus on first principles, focus on your core competencies, and focus a lot more on people, because people are the ones who are going to create value for you, right? But I think if I'm looking at these, right, so these first principles and some of the focus that you're bringing to the business is as what, I mean, from whatever I have seen, is as what made some of the great businesses globally, right? And just following up on that, Satwick, right? So on these first principles which you're seeing in some of the traditional businesses, right? If you have to take some of the learnings, right, where companies have built great businesses and created value, right? And if you have to bring those first principles and apply to some of the startups or new age companies, right? What are those according to you?
So, Karthik, I think I'm going to sort of start with a point that Utpal had made in one of the earlier sessions. And we are looking at resilience as a characteristics. Resilience by definition, as Agam mentioned, is the ability to stay, ability to keep standing over a really long period of time. To my mind, the big challenge that all businesses are going to face is this transitioning that we are doing from a period of near zero interest rates over the last 30, 40 years effectively, at least in the developed markets, to a period where we may have relatively higher interest rates, at least for the foreseeable future. The outcome of this environment, if it were to actually stay, is that capital will not be abundant. Now, businesses which do not have at least unit economics profitability, forget company level profitability, but at least unit economic profitability, will prove to be extremely fragile in a scenario where capital will be scarce. Now, I look at digitalization as a characteristic where there is no business which can remain away from digital transformation. Given this, I see no distinction between a traditional business and a new age business. I think digital transformation in of itself can be a source of great resilience for a business. Let's illustrate this with an example, and let's look at a space which is both extremely traditional but also extremely new age, which is the food space or the QSR space. You've obviously had businesses which have been serving food to people for thousands of years, and now you have businesses which are complete cloud kitchens, which have no physical presence, at least insofar as customer facing is concerned. And I'm going to take an example of a business that is run by a client of mine in the QSR space. It's a privately held company. This is a combination of a dine-in business and a delivery business. Now, COVID happened, and COVID basically disrupted all service businesses which required physical contact. This company also endured hardships, but its culture of frugality, financial discipline, uh, strong leadership, and a very empathetic culture ensured that it survived. Now, the company has been going through digital transformation for a period of time, from back to front. Uh, its supply chain, its manufacturing, which is basically food preparation, its customer-facing processes, which is both acquisition as well as service, its organizational processes, all of these are going through a digital transformation. And I think this process of digital transformation helped at least this business, as I have watched it closely, at least remain standing through this last 2.5 years. And the kind of growth rate that the business is now experiencing is phenomenal. I think the business is probably valued north of $1 billion as we speak now. The metrics for assessment for resiliency for a new age business remain the same as they were for any business in the past. You have to be profitable. You have to have financial discipline. You have to have operational excellence. You have to have adaptability, nimbleness. And to my mind, the characteristics and drivers which will determine resilience, whether a company is resilient or not, are the same that I spoke about in the response to your first question, which is culture and leadership. Everything will follow from that, in my opinion.
I would just double click on one of the things that he said. I think there has never been a better time to build than now. It's when market sees the downturn, it's the best time to build because you have unnecessary competition that has gone out of market. There are people who are building on unnecessary sort of capital lying in the bank and they'll just give discounts and stuff and they'll build businesses and that just goes out when you have market down cycles. And then you suddenly have everybody talking more sense and everybody looking at the first principle, basic metrics in business. As promoters, you get sort of a lot of sort of cool head when such down cycles actually come. If you're a good promoter, good founder, you will actually be more patient. And then you will, it's a very good time to actually look to expand, look to do M&A, look to build sort of new lines and you have more time to actually build it. So in my sense, these are the periods where you patiently build and then you wait for the market cycles to correct. And when they do, then you are in the best spot to then pick up capital if your business needs that. And maybe if your business doesn't need it and it's profitable and then you don't need it. But these are the best times to build. And I think this year, specifically this year, and the year that's going to come, there will never be a better time to build business.
And to be honest, I think you've demonstrated that, right? So you mean your business was built during the pandemic, and you've grown, and you continue to grow even during I would say probably uncertain economic times going forward. But I think when you look at a startup, right? Startups are like babies, right? So when you start, you need the startups to be nurtured, supported, and you need to enable them to start walking and then growing, right? And maybe I mean, apart from being an investor, you are also an ecosystem enabler, right? So you wear multiple hats as part of what you do. As part of KDEB, like how do you support startups? How do you enable them to grow? And more importantly, like how do you make them stand on their feet and be more sustainable?
Yeah, this is very important. As you know, in a entrepreneurial pyramid, top of the pyramid guys don't need any one of us. There are grassroots entrepreneurs. They know how to build the business. They move on. The middle of the pyramid are the people who take the support of the VCs. And they create a very efficient, profitable companies. But in our country, on the bottom of the pyramid, there are many tech founders. They always deliberate whether to do something or not to do something. These are the people, they need some kind of an intervention from the governments, intervention from the ecosystem partners like the TiE, etc., etc. which is very, very important. In my opinion, if you are able to do that effectively, you are able to convert a 60% of those bottom of the pyramid companies to the next level. Once they go to the next level, after the support of the mentors and all, they know how to build the network. From that perspective, there are 3 or 4 elements which are very, very important, which the KDM is working with the government of Karnataka to make sure those elements are available. The number one, you need to make sure that these guys, the bottom of the pyramid guys, have access to the innovation network. There are COEs, because COEs in the cyber security, COEs in the the robotics, COE in the fintech, COE in the biotech, like that. That is an innovation network infrastructure that should be available to the young entrepreneurs. That we are able to create that, and that we are managing it well. The second is an acceleration network, where you are able to connect, help these companies. What these guys need, they need 3 things. Number 1 is a visibility. Number 2 is access to the markets. Number 3 is an access to the capital. So we are enabling these 3 things for them to succeed, because once they succeed in 3 elements, they know how to build a business later. Number 3, that is an acceleration. And number 3, we also need to create some seed funds. There are enough seed funds that are available, but I must compliment that the Government of India as well as the state governments are creating that infrastructure. Government of India has the Startup India Seed Fund. MITI has the Samruddh Seed Fund to product companies. And in the Karnataka, we have Karnataka IT Fund. One step ahead, we are creating the cluster focus funds. The reason why we are creating the cluster focus funds are, currently most of the IT industry is concentrated in these urban cities like the Bangalore and Hyderabad. We need to make sure that this industry also spread to the other locations. That's where we can achieve this Bharat IT, the vision of the Prime Minister. So we are using this as a beyond Bangalore as a mission, and helping and supporting the companies in Mangalore, Mysore and Hubli. And that is a great thing. In last 6 months, we could able to identify around 450 companies. And these 450 companies, we call them as a Beyond Bangalore Startup Grid, and we expose them to the Market Connects as well as the Investor Connect. I'm happy to say today, I think in a TiE Global in award, 2 of the companies, one company from Mysore and one company from Hubli, they made it to the top